Getting to the nitty gritty. What's up, YouTube? Hey, I hope this new, that's too bright. That's too bright. I wish it was a setting in between. I got stuff all over the soften the light and everything because I'm so close to the light and everything. Check it out, man. Hey, P. Diddy on trial, jury drama. Jury number 6 is gone and he need to be gone. He lied. I don't know how this court thing works. We don't know. But if you lie, we can't trust you, man. Get up out of here. Even though we know you was gonna be against Diddy. We know that part. And you can't sit here and listen to all this mess and sit there and let him go free. You can't do that. Nobody can do that. How in the hell? The stuff that we hearing? The stuff that Uncle Mike is hearing and everything we hearing, they hearing it straight from the horse's mouth. And you gonna sit there and let him go? What kind of person are you? Man. I would have been in that joint like this. Soon as Cassie was the first one that took the stand, right? Soon as Cassie take the stand, I would have been like, mistrial, put him in jail. Oh, is that what you supposed to say? Oh, mistrial, cause she pregnant. You hitting on her? Mistrial, put him in jail. They be saying it all wrong, right? I Jack Yana, he gotta go to jail. Hey man, y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, man. Let's see what my man Law and Crime is gonna say. Then you got the worst person. Oh my God, you can't get this. Lord, please don't let crime pay. My bad, y'all, my bad. Shit, man. You got Kanye West supporting this fool. What, do we need anything else? I pray, man. I don't know what the hell. Y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, man. I'm about to have a nervous breakdown over this mess, man. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Let's check this bad boy out, man. Y'all follow me now.
We have learned a lot more about the complicated relationship between Sean Diddy Combs and Jane, another alleged victim in this sex trafficking, racketeering, and prostitution case. From audio tapes to texts to payments to Homeland Security searches to extortion to alleged violence. What exactly happened in court today and how does it fit into the overall case? Let's talk to our in-court reporter, Law and Crime's Elizabeth Milner, to get to the bottom of it. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, a lot to get into when it comes to Jane's testimony, because the last we discussed, she was testifying about these hotel nights, these debauchery nights, that she would be performing sex acts with other men in front of Sean Combs. And she even alleged that she was tasked with doing this after she threw up, and even after she was physically exhausted. She claims she vocalized in different ways to Sean Combs, her partner, how she didn't want to keep on doing this. She testified that Combs gave her cash and gifts and paid for her rent, but it's complicated. It's complicated by her messages to Sean Combs. It's complicated by her testimony that she was with Combs basically a few weeks up until his arrest. And you also have to wonder, is it also complicated with what she said today, including new allegations of violence that have changed the trajectory of her testimony? So a lot to get into with what happened today. Let me bring on Elizabeth Milner, Law and Crime's in-court reporter who was there for every minute of the action. Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I feel like a large portion of the beginning of the day, for the first few hours, was dedicated to the prosecution asking her to elaborate and explain her reluctance to engage in these sex acts. And it becomes a question of whether or not it was her as a girlfriend or partner who just didn't want to do this, or, as part of a relationship issue, or whether it was a crime. This was non-consensual, a form of force, fraud, or coercion used to induce her into engaging in commercial sex acts with men in all different cities. So, Elizabeth, what was the testimony from the first few hours today about this reluctance?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of text messages that were shown specifically to the jurors and the witness and the parties. Unfortunately, we weren't able to see them in the gallery because of a pre-existing order whenever Jane was to take the stand, and that has been going on since last week. So we haven't been able to see exhibits, I want to say, since last Thursday, but we're hearing these text messages as AUSA Maureen Comey and even Jane herself are just kind of reading through a number of these text messages, either from her and Diddy, between herself and the escorts. But as far as just her and Diddy goes, right off the bat, as we had started this morning, we see a text message between Jane and Diddy from September 15th of 2023, where Jane was texting Diddy on these different phones because he has more than one phone. And Jane would say, should we start looking for Sunday night flights? And Jane said, love and miss you, mine's forever. And Diddy's responding, send me some SHIT of you being a bad girl. And Jane believed that those messages about her sending him something was for her to send sexually explicit videos to Diddy, and Diddy had responded, when is the earliest you can get here? Jane says that she didn't want to send this particular video, and Diddy said something along the lines of, the F, I'm asking you to do this, I have the phones, and those phones being with the phones that they have of explicit videos together. Diddy said, stop it, don't say no to me, and Jane says, well, I'm traveling with our phone, and Jane says that Diddy would record on his two phones, and then his assistants and staff had easy access to it, so they had this separate phone to record their sexually explicit videos together. And Jane was saying in these messages, that phone doesn't look, and I'm paraphrasing here because they go by so fast when they were kind of saying these out loud, and Jane had said, you're using our vids to get erect with someone else. And Diddy said, bye, I was asking you to send something, good night. Jane says, well, I'm not going to New York, you're texting me so that way you can get erect for somebody else. And Jane says that she saw on a podcast that he was bragging essentially about having sex for 48 hours completely with someone else. And so Diddy had told her that no sex was involved on this trip, where he was going on this podcast with another person, another woman that Diddy was seeing, and just kind of bragging about this. And this 48-hour trip that he was kind of talking about was on a yacht, and that Diddy told her that he was going to take her on this specific trip, and that Jane agreed to do a hotel night after he had promised her to take her on this trip, and that he ended up not taking her on the trip. So it seems like it's kind of going possibly into the prosecution's argument, which they believe it's sex trafficking by fraud, where he was promising her to do these things and then she would comply with it, but then he would end up not taking her out on special dinners or anything like that. And you kind of can see both sides of this, right? Where, okay, is it a crime for a man to lie to you? Not necessarily, but according to the prosecution and their argument, they think because that she was complying and doing these hotel nights, that kind of played into their kind of theory of the case. And so then we see more exhibits, text messages from Jane and Diddy, where Diddy is saying, what happened? I'm sad, what happened? Jane is saying, well, I don't want to be used and locked in a room to fulfill your fantasies. We hear about an exhibit from September 16th of that same year of 2023. But this one is a note from Jane's notes app, where she says that she kind of just writes out her feelings similar to diary entries, and then sometimes will kind of copy and paste, send them as a text message, where Jane did just that, where she had said, as much as I want to see you, I don't want to be treated like a hoe in a hotel room. And Jane was explaining that she was just writing out her feelings. And so then we hear about more texts between Jane and Diddy, where Jane is saying, I don't want to be used, locked in a hotel room. I'm starting to realize what this is. And Diddy saying, girl, that was podcast talk. I was alone. I'm tired of your false accusations. I promise on baby love, who is his youngest daughter, I didn't have sex. And Jane was saying that wasn't podcast talk, and saying that you made Papa proud. And this was kind of in reference to this podcast where Diddy was kind of talking about this 48 hours of sex essentially. And Diddy had said, bye, always tripping around me. And so then we kind of see more text exhibits where Jane was saying that she wanted to go back to when they first started dating. She said, I opened Pandora's box. She can't seem to close it. She said, one night of fun turned into our entire relationship. I'm crying as I'm writing this. And Diddy is responding, stop, girl, let's talk. And then he sends her an audio message. And then Diddy can be heard on this particular audio message. So the jury is hearing this. We're hearing this out loud inside the courtroom, where Diddy has kind of this raspy voice, and he's saying that he was sick in bed. The message you sent me, what's the problem? We have an actual open relationship. What's the problem? And that Diddy never brought up kind of her concerns about doing these hotel nights. Instead, he just never talked about it in this particular audio message. And so Diddy ended up calling her on a FaceTime and told her she wanted to hear. That's what she testified to. And Jane testified, he said a lot of things that I like to hear, that he loved me, that he missed me, that he wanted to see me. And so Jane ended up agreeing to go to New York. And this was a trip to New York in September of 2023, where she thought that she was going just for alone time with her boyfriend. And then what ended up being alone time with her boyfriend actually turned into them messaging Cabral, who was an escort that they had used often in their freak-offs. And then Cabral was flown out from Atlanta, Georgia, over here to New York, and that Jane participated in this freak-off with Diddy and, with Cabral, as Diddy kind of watched, and that was what had ended up happening. And so we saw a lot of text messages where she was really just kind of explaining her frustration as far as why Diddy was treating her this way and making her out to be kind of someone who was only used to fulfill his fantasies, as opposed to the other women that he was kind of taunting out there, kind of to what she was kind of describing in her face a little bit, where she was kind of kept a secret, and that her job essentially was to hire these other men, or to bring these other men for their hotel nights or debauchery nights. And so we saw a lot of text messages from around that time frame where she seemed to be very vocal about voicing her opinion on that she didn't want to do it. But then I think kind of where that area is where maybe it kind of confused the jury is that even afterwards she still did it. And so I feel like when cross-examination eventually happens, that they'll really kind of be like, okay, well, you continue to do this even after you said you didn't want to do this, and you said this, but you did that. And so, overall, a lot of text messages were shown that really kind of voiced Jane's opinion about just not wanting to do these hotel nights anymore.
Yeah, I saw there was some reporting where she allegedly said, "I'm not a porn star. These experiences are desensitizing sex for me. It's been 3 years of me having to bleep strangers." There was another, "You pair me up with some random man, any bleep for your own sick sexual." And there were parts where it looked, I mean, I wonder if the jury will accept, was he threatening her directly, indirectly? I mean, I believe there was one message, "You're burning a bridge that you're going to need tomorrow." And we know that financial control is a big part of this, gifts, cash, rent. But I have to tell you, Elizabeth, my jaw hit the floor. I think a big controversial moment, if we're trying to understand whether or not she was a willing participant or consented to this, didn't she write in a text message to Sean Combs that she consented in the videos of these sexual encounters? Because we know, according to her testimony, that Sean Combs have recorded some certain of these sex acts. And he basically said what? That if people look at these videos, they'll see it was consensual. Didn't she agree with that? Or I might be completely wrong.
So Jane was kind of vocalizing just her displeasure of having to do these wild debauchery nights or hotel nights just with other men, that she always wanted to be having sex with her partner, and her partner being Sean Combs. So she messaged Diddy saying that you place these harmful men on me, and Diddy had responded, "Well, talk to God, I'm gonna pray for you, you're burning a bridge that you aren't prepared to pay for." And Jane said that in the text that she knew that she had consented to being on this tape, but she said she was uncomfortable, but she kept doing this because she loved Diddy, and that Diddy kind of even threw in her face that she appeared to be enjoying it. She appeared to be excited even while she was on these freak-off tapes or these sexually explicit videos. And Jane says, "Well, I'm sorry, I want to feel better." And that was in reference to her just feeling uncomfortable throughout this entire process. And so Jane admitted while she was on the stand that she did watch her own freak-off tapes, and she said that I was being high and following a pattern in the majority of these tapes. It was like watching the same show over and over again. And so this was kind of at a point in, I guess, her and Diddy's relationship where she was really just kind of telling him that she didn't want to be doing these hotel nights anymore, and that the videos were kind of thrown back into her face. But it seems like from her perspective, while she was on the stand, I should say, that she didn't feel as comfortable as maybe the video may have portrayed her to look as more comfortable and consenting in this process.
Yeah, I wonder how much the jury is going to wrestle with the idea, did she vocalize enough her perceived lack of consent? You know, there was a part of it where she talked about in her notes app. Hey, I want to take a quick minute to thank Upside for sponsoring our coverage of Sean Diddy Combs' trial. Now, Upside is amazing. For make time at the request of Sean Combs, draw 5 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Today began the cross-examination of key Diddy accuser Jane. The defense questioned her about voice notes, texts, drugs, sexually explicit situations. But the key question was she forced or coerced into sex acts with other men at the request of Sean Combs? Or was this all consensual? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Jane, alleged victim 2 in this case, is now facing questioning from the defense after testifying that she performed sex acts with men for Sean Combs' pleasure, including after she claimed she threw up, after she claimed she was exhausted, after she claimed she repeatedly expressed her reluctance to continuing these hotel nights. She testified that she was subject to Combs' physical violence. After all of this, now she is facing questioning from defense attorney Tenny Garagos. And remember why her testimony is so important, right? It's important for several reasons. For sex trafficking, she claims that she had sexual relations with men in all different locations, who these men were being paid. And if the prosecution can show that she was coerced or forced into these commercial sex acts, that's the key. The prostitution charge, her testimony that she was transported to different locations for these hotel nights, that the men were paid through Combs, that their travel to these places was paid and arranged through Combs. That's a more linear way to get to transportation to engage in prostitution. Racketeering conspiracy, the top charge, right? We're talking about an alleged criminal enterprise, criminal association. Well, her testimony arguably supports that by saying that assistants, right, Sean Combs' inner circle, set up these nights, that she was a victim of coerced sexual activity. Sex trafficking is an underlying predicate crime of RICO. And generally, the more the prosecution can show a pattern of abuse of women as they outline in their indictment, that helps with the RICO charge. So, what does cross-examination look like? What did the defense try to get at? So for that, let me bring on Law and Crime's in-court reporter Elizabeth Milner, who was there for every second of this testimony. And the most important thing, first of all, happy birthday, Elizabeth. It's Elizabeth's birthday. She had to work on her birthday, but worked on such a big case. She was in the courtroom. Elizabeth, happy birthday. Hope you're having an okay birthday so far. I know it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but that's okay. I'd rather spend it with you guys.
Well, that's very kind. And she was getting a lot of love during our lunchtime show today. Everybody was wishing Elizabeth happy birthday. You can check those out up on YouTube as well. Okay. So before we even get into Jane, Elizabeth, a lot of questions that we had, particularly on the lunchtime show, was about what's the status of the defense's mistrial motion. Remember, they basically said that witnesses had perjured themselves on the stand. This was entirely prejudicial. The case should be thrown out right now. And also, there was a conversation about whether Dr. Dawn Hughes, this forensic psychologist who testified about the complicated dynamics and relationship between abusers and victims, whether she will be recalled to the stand. She testified earlier for the prosecution. Does she have to be recalled? Those two issues, real quick, can you give us updates on the mistrial motion and Dr. Dawn Hughes?
Well, after spending an entire day of court, you can kind of possibly guess that the judge did deny that motion for a mistrial. And there was a lot of reasoning behind it. So the defense, as far as the motion being denied, the judge was saying that no interference happened and that the defense was able to undermine the alleged incident, and that being Bonna being allegedly dangled off of the 17-story balcony over at Cassie's condo. And the judge was saying, well, you guys were able to undermine this alleged incident by showing the hotel receipt. And so he said that this isn't fodder for a mistrial and that the defense can use these exhibits to undermine both Bonna's testimony as well as Cassie's testimony. And so they kind of had more discussions about it. And the defense was like, well, we didn't know what Bonna was going to say while she was on the stand, because a lot of their motion for the mistrial really had to do with Bonna's testimony and how they believed that she had perjured herself after getting an immunity deal to testify for the prosecution. But they being the defense was kind of like, okay, well, the government didn't offer any response to this particular hotel receipt. But then the judge was kind of like, well, Nicole Westmoreland really did have her Perry Mason moment under the cross-examination. And that's not grounds for a mistrial, because they were kind of able to really kind of poke holes into the story that Bonna was testifying to, as opposed to that Trump hotel receipt, which showed that Diddy wasn't even on the West Coast when this alleged incident particularly happened. And then the defense was like, well, Cassie said that she saw this incident happen. But then in the text message, she's saying that she saw or she heard about this incident because she was told about this incident after the fact. And so the defense says that they wanted to submit a certain instruction to the jury so that way the jurors know that Bonna's testimony was allegedly perjured. But the government was like, well, Bonna's testimony wasn't perjured. She might have been confused. The metadata could have been wrong because when they were still showing exhibits at this point, you could see the metadata of when Bonna took or was sent photos of her injuries after this alleged incident happened. Those injuries were taken or at least sent to her on September 26th, but on that same day, Diddy was, there's a hotel receipt showing that Diddy was actually here in New York, not in California around this time. But the judge said, well, maybe there's this innocent explanation that this happened 9 years ago. Bonna testified that she was in her early 20s at this point, addicted to drugs, and that this photo could have been taken earlier, it could have been taken later, and that the defense did enough on the cross-examination to really attack the timing of when this alleged incident happened. But the defense was like, well, the government still isn't bringing up this hotel receipt, and Bonna had motivation to lie while on the witness stand because of her civil suit against Sean Combs. And then the judge was like, okay, well, you can submit a proposed instruction for the jury to listen to. And then the defense was like, okay. But as far as the motion to recall Dr. Don Hughes to testify, that motion was denied. And so it was interesting because during the cross-examination of Dr. Don Hughes, who was a government witness, she was kind of a blind witness to this case, Jonathan Bach, who was retained kind of last minute for Diddy's defense team, that was the only time we actually saw him inside the court doing the cross-examination when Dr. Don Hughes testified. But we did see him today, and I think we might have seen him today, especially this morning, just in the case that the judge didn't deny this motion, and so that Jonathan Bach could possibly argue it, but we didn't see him after the lunch break. But essentially, the judge was like, okay, well, Dr. Hughes testified about romantic relationships, not employee relationships when it comes to Mia, and specifically Mia still sending text messages to Diddy even after she was kind of terminated from her employment, but also after the allegations that she said that she had against Diddy, where she was saying that Diddy allegedly sexually assaulted and sexually abused her. And so the judge was kind of like, okay, well, that was the government's job to really ask those questions as far as the employee relationships and why people may text their employer after the fact. And so it seemed like the judge gave a win to both sides this morning, either the motion for the mistrial or even the motion to recall Dr. Don Hughes. And so that was kind of what had all happened this morning before the jury entered and before the witness came back on the stand.
That's so specific, right? So you can't just make, I guess the judge is saying, you can't just make a general analysis that any victim-abuser relationship, there has to be, if it, she testified about a romantic relationship and the dynamics of a romantic relationship as opposed to anybody else who might be abused. Yeah, it sounds like the prosecution should have thought of that, and that could be a problem. That could be a problem. Although you also wonder, the jury might just listen to Dr. Don Hughes and use that analysis to explain away some of the behavior of any of the witnesses who've testified. I don't know. Don't want to get down that hole. I do want to talk about Jane. And it seemed the beginning of her cross-examination by Tenny Garagos was about the circumstances that brought her to even be a witness in this trial, right?
Well, right off the bat, Tenny Garagos, very friendly, I felt like, with Jane while she was on the witness stand. You would think that the two were kind of old friends catching up. Obviously, we know that's not the case, but Tenny came out very nice. She wasn't kind of like aggressive necessarily. It wasn't kind of like the Brian Steele moment of the cross-examination of Mia, or even the Nicole Westmoreland cross-examination of Bonna, or even Don Richard. But right off the bat, the defense was acknowledging or that they had met with Jane specifically just a few times before she later became a government witness, and that they were really kind of putting an emphasis that even though Diddy is currently paying her rent and Diddy is currently paying for the lawyer that she has representing her, that Diddy didn't even interfere even though he's paying for her attorney. And that Jane was explaining once again to the jurors that she hasn't spoken to Diddy for 8 months prior to taking the stand or even seen him, because obviously he's been incarcerated since the last time she saw him, but last time she saw him in person was August of 2024. He was arrested the following month, and she says she hasn't seen him since August of last year. And so the defense was asking Jane about her preparation for the cross-examination and that happened over 2 or so meetings with the government. Jane said that she wasn't the one who went to Homeland Security, that it was the federal prosecutors who had called her, and that she didn't want anything to do with HSI. We learned yesterday while she was on the witness stand, still under direct, that HSI on the day of the raids to Diddy's Miami property as well as his Los Angeles home, that HSI actually left a card on Jane's door too. And so then the defense is kind of like, okay, well, you had done a night with an escort even after knowing that he was under investigation. And Jane says yes, and that Jane was given immunity to be a grand jury or given immunity at the grand jury hearing. And then the defense is like, okay, well, you chose to participate. And Jane is like, well, it was because of my relationship with him and the lifestyle that he introduced me to. Well, you didn't break up with him. This is Tenny Garagos. And then Jane is like, well, of course not. And that they were really kind of talking about whether or not Jane has regret versus resentment versus regret. And that Jane was explaining that she didn't have regret, just a little bit resentment. And so I think for the jurors kind of listening to this, because I even said this yesterday, Jesse, you can feel sometimes while she's testifying that she still has feelings for Sean Combs, but then I think there are also other aspects where she's still kind of processing, and this is something that she testified to, just processing everything that went on throughout the duration of their relationship.
Elizabeth, would I be crazy to say that what I think the defense is doing is not necessarily, and we'll get into this, not necessarily attacking her credibility, that these things happen the same way they were attacking the credibility of, let's say, a Mia or a Brianna Bengolan, trying to say you were never sexually assaulted or you were never dangled off the balcony. But it seems what they're trying to say, and I could be wrong, you're testifying to something, and it's the government who's forcing you to testify. It's the government who's transforming your testimony about what could be a toxic relationship into this racketeering case, into this sex trafficking case. It's not like they're distancing themselves from these episodes occurring. It's not as if they're saying these episodes with other men didn't happen. But to me, it seems what they're saying, they're not even attacking her so much as trying to say, you didn't want to be a part of this. It's the government who's forcing you here. It's the government who's transforming your testimony into this federal charge when it's not. Real quick, do you think I'm totally off with that based on the questioning today? And we'll get more specific about it.
Yeah, not at all. I felt that way kind of at times too, where it was kind of like, okay, do you feel like that, honestly, count 4 really applies to you, or is the government telling you that count 4 really applies to you? Because there were times, Jesse, to be quite honest with you, that I was like, okay, well, it seems that she was totally fine doing these hotel nights as long as she was also getting the love and adoration and affection from her partner, from her lover, from Sean Combs, pretty much. And so I wonder when the jury goes back to eventually deliberate on this case, will they kind of have the same feelings that I think a lot of us were having, where they were kind of like, okay, do you feel that you are a sex trafficking victim, or is this something the government is telling that you are? And so it could go kind of either way. We'll see.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And I understand, the cross really focused on, and not surprising here, a lot about the love in the relationship and how she wanted to cuddle next to him and she wanted to be with him and, essentially do all these things. And even voice notes were played to show the loving relationship, right? Talk to us about that, because it might be difficult for a jury to reconcile that he is a sex trafficker and she's a victim based on our common understanding or general understanding of what those roles might be, versus the love in this relationship, right? Didn't they focus upon that at the beginning of her cross, the love and the voice notes? What happened there?
Yeah, well, Jane was explaining that there was a lot of kind of blurred lines in terms of her emotions, and that she just wanted to fulfill her duties as a partner to Sean Combs. And so the defense was really kind of talking, to your point, Jesse, just about the love that Jane had for Sean Combs, aka Diddy, and just why she kept staying throughout the 3 or so years of their relationship, and that she kept on even doing these hotel nights, especially even during the later years where she was kind of expressing that she didn't want to be doing them anymore, and this was all that she was worth. But as far as even that, when they were recalling that Jane would, put on Diddy's favorite show, which so happens to be Dateline. Unfortunately, I was waiting to hear that it might have been Sidebar presented by Jesse Weber, but unfortunately it was Dateline. And that Diddy was smiling as Jane was talking about doing foot rubs on him. And I thought it was an interesting kind of moment where he just kind of, took the mask off a little bit and was smiling just about that particular part of the testimony. But then, we started kind of getting into the exhibits as far as the voice notes goes, because this is a very, was a very current relationship. So there was a lot of text shown and there was a lot of voice notes shown, because that's what a lot of people do nowadays, as opposed to texting or calling. They send voice notes to one another. And so they kind of took us back a little bit to their Turks and Caicos trip when they two first kind of got together. And so we heard an exhibit, and it's a voice note from Diddy to Jane, where Diddy is saying, "Hey baby, we had a great time. You are the crack pipe." And the crack pipe was kind of in reference to, I guess, their lovemaking, essentially. And that Diddy was saying, okay, stay in the light. It was so much effing fun. Get in your bag. And the get in your bag comment, according to Jane, was kind of acknowledging that love contract where they had like a gentleman's agreement for him to pretty much pay for her rent. And so then we hear a voice note from Jane to Diddy where she's like, "I love being up under you. Stay in the light. We'll have a big celebration for you. A whole new level was unlocked. I've been closer to you. I'm so happy. I hope you have an amazing day today. Health is wealth. I love you so much. Moi. Yay to your contract." And that contract that she was referring to was the love contract. And so it seemed like we were kind of hearing a lot of other voice notes where Jane was kind of expressing her love to Diddy, and Diddy was kind of expressing his love back to her, as opposed to yesterday under the direct, where really the prosecution was kind of showing the more kind of aggressive voice notes where Diddy was telling her to get out of her feelings and that he's single, all of that stuff. But as far as today goes, the defense really kind of was like, okay, well, there was love there. Yeah. You two were expressing love with one another, and you seemed comfortable expressing your love with your partner at the time.
By the way, we plan to continue to providing you this Diddy coverage. We're going to give you recaps. We're going to break down these legal issues that happen almost every day in court. And one of the reasons we can do this and bring you this content is because we get amazing support from our incredible partner and sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. This is America's largest injury law firm. And honestly, our dollars to talk. We got into more racy, all be done through the phone. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC sidebar. We got into more racy and bombshell text messages, hotel nights, even a video that all further examines the relationship between alleged victim Jane and criminal defendant Sean Diddy Combs. Law and Crime's in-court reporter Elizabeth Milner is back with us about what happened in court today as Jane was once again questioned by Diddy's defense attorney. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Alleged victim 2 in the criminal case of Sean Diddy Combs, Jane, back on the stand, back being cross-examined by defense counsel Tenny Garagos. Important day for the defense, because after all, Jane, who was testifying using a pseudonym, explained that she was essentially pressured into these hotel nights with Diddy, her lover, for several years. These sexual episodes with other men, sex workers, in front of Diddy for his pleasure. But then on cross-examination, they seemed to be trying to suggest this was consensual, that she was a willing participant, that he isn't this nefarious sex trafficker as portrayed by the prosecution, that there was no force, fraud, or coercion. So I want to bring on Law and Crime's in-court reporter Elizabeth Milner, who's been not only in the courtroom today for all of the action, but in the courtroom for every minute of the action, every day. And particularly today with the cross-examination of Jane, it's really interesting. Elizabeth, before we even get into that, there was a lot of chatter, particularly on the lunchtime show that we do on Law and Crime's YouTube, and commentary about this juror. There's apparently some sort of issue with a juror. I know we have limited information, but based on what was said in court, can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, so they gave us little tidbits, little pieces of information, little nuggets here and there, but it seems like from the defense's perspective that they really want to keep this particular juror and they want to make sure that this juror will not be dismissed. Now, as far as why this juror might possibly be dismissed, that is still kind of up in the air. As far as what we've even seen in the transcripts, that portion is redacted or it's sealed. And so the defense was just pretty much saying that they want to be able to respond to what the government responded to in another letter. And so they said pretty much that they being the government, and this is the defense making this argument, that the government just wants to strike another black juror. And then I think the government kind of took a little bit of offense to that. And the government was like, well, okay, looking back at the record, we see kind of a lack of compelling, and then they were kind of going so fast. But as far as just what the judge said, as far as what will happen kind of next, is that we'll deal with this issue before the weekend. And so it's still kind of up in the air as far as even all the jurors being inside the courtroom today, because it was a little bit of a shorter session today. Everyone was in there. I saw all the jurors. So nobody has been dismissed thus far. Nobody's been kicked out just yet or anything like that. But we should know before the week is over what will happen to this juror number 6.
Yeah, I saw reporting that the prosecution says there's a lack of candor, meaning, I don't know, the juror wasn't being honest with something during jury selection. I'm not sure. Hopefully you get more information as the week progresses. But let's now get into Jane's testimony. So it seems to me, and there's a lot to get into here, it seems to me a big theme today was trying to stress that she wasn't objecting to the hotel nights, or that she was somehow setting them up or encouraging them, and also how she communicated with the men, how she communicated with the sex workers. What can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, so it was another day, and again, even though it was a shortened day, it was another day where we were seeing a lot, or not we were seeing a lot of text exhibits, because while Jane is still on the stand, unfortunately, we cannot see the exhibits. They are not shown on the exhibit screen, but we're hearing about all these different exhibits. So sometimes when I say we're seeing, the jury's actually seeing it, but we are hearing about all these different text messages. And so, yes, it seemed like the theme from the defense's cross-examination of Jane today was definitely like, it seemed from their kind of theory of this that Jane was a willing participant, even went as far as to set up these hotel nights, and even went as far as to book these entertainers that she specifically wanted for these various hotel nights. And so just right off the bat, we're seeing text exhibits between Jane and Cabral, one of the entertainers or escorts that they use, from December 20th of 2021. So still kind of early-ish into the relationship between Sean Combs and Jane. And so these text messages were after a hotel night where Cabral is saying, "Good morning, love. How are you feeling? We had a pretty intense night. That was the roughest sex we ever had." And then Jane is responding, "Ha, ha, 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 ha," bunch of emojis. That was one for the books. And then Jane also responded, "Send me something." And then the defense was kind of getting into the length of these hotel nights, where one of the longest hotel nights that she had done was 3 days, which is a long period of time. And then under direct, when AUSA Maureen Comey was doing her direct examination of Jane, Jane was explaining that New Year's Eve of 2022, that Diddy came to Jane's hotel and that 3 men were there that night, and that she seemed okay with doing these types of nights. But as far as Jane's kind of role in setting up these hotel nights, the jury did see other text exhibits between Jane and Cabral, where Cabral is saying, "Hey, I'll be in LA on the 12th of February." And Jane is saying, "Hey, babe, happy Friday. Are you up? How are you? It's my birthday weekend and you didn't show me love. I haven't forgotten that your LA dates are coming up. Make me a personal video just for me." And then Cabral responds to these text messages. And so then the jury also saw more text exhibits, kind of going fast forward a little bit in time, April 4th of 2022, between Jane and Sean Combs, where Diddy is saying, "I've been having crazy fantasies about you and Leo," Leo being the Italian person that Jane references. He's actually one of the entertainers, but she calls him the Italian. And then Jane is saying, "I'll figure out what time I can make it out there. Baby, I want to make love to you. I haven't had you to myself. It's been 5 months. I'm fine with the other stuff." And Diddy is saying that he's aroused. "What have you been thinking about? See if the Italian is free after we spend time together. Tomorrow is bad. How about this weekend?" And it seemed like Jane, even for the next hotel night, which occurred 10 days later after these text messages that I just read, but the defense was kind of pointing out that after these specific hotel nights in April of 2022, that Jane and Diddy didn't have hotel nights for about 2 months, whereas under direct, it seemed like Jane was testifying that pretty much every time she saw Diddy, that she was doing these hotel nights. But the defense was really kind of saying, well, there were long periods of times where you weren't doing these hotel nights. It could either be weeks on end, it could be months on end, or there were just times where you and Diddy were just hanging out together and being together and in each other's arms, but you guys weren't always doing these hotel nights. And so then more text exhibits were shown to the jury, this being in June 19th of 2022, where Jane is saying, "I'm having a vibe." Diddy says, "Well, what are you in the mood for?" And Jane is saying, "A good time." And then Diddy saying, "You planned something for me." Jane said, I know what you want, but I'm not in the mood. I don't want to make you mad. And then Diddy responds, all good. Surprise me with a freak-off role play. And so I think the defense also pointing out here that they didn't do a hotel night, even though it was kind of insinuated in these particular messages. But what they ended up doing was having a movie night. And that was a night where they weren't watching movies, you know, a good movie from a movie theater or anything like that, but they were watching movies that would either be pornography or movies that they filmed together during these hotel nights. And so the defense really kind of, I think, poked a lot of holes as far as Jane saying under direct that every time she always did these hotel nights, every single time she saw Sean Combs or saw Diddy. But under the defense's cross-examination, they were really like, okay, it doesn't seem like that was always the case.
Yeah, and the idea, right, that he didn't always force or demand her to engage in this, but she was a partner in it. And I remember there was a message today, and correct me if I'm wrong, where she had messaged him, not really in the mood for that part, don't want to make you mad. And he allegedly responds, all good. And then there's messages where she expresses her love for him. Like, I love you so much as my friend, my lover, my boyfriend, even though you don't like that word. Weren't they really trying to show today, through her messages and his messages, that he wasn't always forcing her or asking her opinion about this and trying to show the love that they had between each other, right? That was a big theme, the softer side of Sean Combs, right?
Yeah, the very soft side from what we see. Like, there are times, honestly, Jesse, where the messages are being read aloud, and it seems like they're sometimes, and I kind of hate to put it this way, like they're two high school kids in love. Like, you really, at times, I felt kind of conflicted as far as just hearing these, because there's, you know, the aspects of Jane's testimony under direct, right? But then there's aspects of the cross examination where the defense was kind of like, okay, the government didn't show you every single thing between their relationship, and there were just kind of a lot of things. And so Jane, throughout her testimony, even under direct, even under cross-examination, she really kind of expresses very often how much she loves pleasing her partner, her romantic partner, her lover, and that being Sean Combs around the time. And so we're hearing more text exhibits, July 22nd of 2022, where Jane is saying, good morning, baby, I had such a great time with you. Diddy's saying, want to do dinner at 9, pack a freak bag just in case. But then the defense pointed out to Jane, okay, well, just because he made you pack a freak bag doesn't mean you guys always did hotel nights, right? And Jane was like, yeah, that is true, and that she would normally just pack these freak night bags or these freak bags, and she would put lingerie and high heels and just things that he likes inside these particular bags. And so then we're hearing more text exhibits around that same time frame, summer of 2022. So this was July 27th of 2022, where Diddy's saying, what do you want to do? And Jane is saying, well, what do you want to do, baby? And then just that, are you aroused for me? And Diddy's like, okay, well, can you? I'm going to work out with Paul and then meet up with you. And then Jane is saying, do you want my hair up? And Diddy's saying, okay, what time are we ready? So as far as the really lovey-dovey messages, those were also shown a lot today, where there was an exhibit shown to the jury where it was text messages from Jane to Diddy after a hotel night, and it was kind of interesting, Jesse, because these are really kind of lovey-dovey messages that are being read out loud to the jury. However, at this particular part, Jane is getting kind of emotional on the stand, and I kind of even wrote in my notes, I wasn't sure why, because as you're hearing these particular messages being read, it's things like, I love you so much, baby. You're the reason my child smiles. I love you. No other man has treated me this way. Then there's more messages from Jane again, and the defense is pointing out these were after hotel nights, where Jane is saying, I love you, baby. Can't wait to see your interview tomorrow. And that Diddy just makes her smile. And Jane wrote, just wanted to make you smile, spending time in the sunshine. Diddy is writing in messages, okay, movie night was off the chain, and Jane is responding, loving that, delicious. And just more messages where you could really see just the love between the two. There was one particular video that was actually shown to the jury. Unfortunately, we weren't able to see it, but you could really hear Diddy and Jane kind of in a moment of togetherness, not like that way, but togetherness as far as being together just as two people would in just any other relationship. And so This was a video, again, shown to the jury where Jane was explaining around this particular time frame. She was feeling depressed around this, but then you see this video and Diddy is saying, oh, I love this right here. They sounded so in love. Jane is heard laughing a lot in this particular video, and Diddy is saying, I was in a dark hole. You had to save me. You had to pick me up. I love you. And then Jane is saying, I love you too, baby. You did saving on me. And so the defense was saying that around this time frame where Jane is saying that she was really depressed around this time because she was doing all these hotel nights, not with just one man, but with multiple men, and that she was super depressed, that she and Diddy were spending time together, that they were both depressed together. But in this video, you can hear just kind of love and laughter. But according to Jane, because again, she was getting kind of emotional at points, especially during the latter part of court today, where I was kind of wondering why particularly she was getting a little emotional, as it just seemed pretty innocent. Pretty innocent just hearing these tags.
Let me ask you this. It seemed to me, based on reading the reporting, she was doubling down on the stand, and correct me if I'm wrong, doubling down on the stand that she was pressured into this, that it might look like she was all on board with this, but that she felt pressured to do this. And I don't know what that back and forth looked like between her and Tenny Garagos, but would I be wrong that is a common theme, a common response she came back with today?
Yeah, it seemed like she really was kind of doubling down as far as why she was doing these hotel nights, because she wanted to please her partner, but also that she, and that same breath kind of was saying that she was just very uncomfortable with it. But I think the defense was also kind of like, okay, are you saying that you're uncomfortable with these hotel nights because you have regret or resentment now? But it seemed like from these messages, and it seemed like from what we were hearing about in these exhibits, that around the time frame where this was occurring, so between 2021 to 2024, and we haven't even really got into 2024 just yet, that Jane was totally fine, and that the only things that would make her apprehensive about these hotel nights, according to the defense, was that Diddy and other women were being seen together publicly. So they brought up other women, including a name that we've heard a lot during testimony, going all the way back to Cassie, that being Gina, another example being Young Miami. And then it wasn't even just those two, it was other women too, where Jane would spot photos of him with a woman in London and would get upset, and the defense is kind of like, okay, well, is this why you were saying that you didn't want to do a hotel night? Is this why that you were saying you were uncomfortable, as opposed to a couple weeks or months ago where you were planning to do these nights, the sobriety party or the all-star party and those types of things? And so it seemed like a little back and forth where I think Jane at points was kind of getting a little short with her answers, as far as just being like trying to over-explain her text messages and why she particularly sent those types of text messages, because it was either to please her partner or because she was reading in between the lines of what Diddy really wanted. Right. And then she would get a little short with Tenny Garagos at some points today, but she held it together as best as she could. But again, going back to some of those points where she was a little emotional on the stand too. So it was a little bit of both today.
A mysterious unnamed rapper, alleged coerced sex acts, a major blow-up. Key Diddy accuser Jane has wrapped up her testimony and faced a lot of questions from the rap mogul's attorney. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Another significant day in the Sean Diddy Combs criminal trial. The defense wrapped up their questioning, their cross-examination of accuser Jane. She's officially off the stand. She was questioned once again by the prosecution. We'll get into that too. But this is Sean Combs' former love interest, who claims that essentially she was pressured into sex acts with other men as Combs watched and pleasured himself. Hotel nights, debauchery nights. Claims that Combs was physically violent with her. Claims that he forced her to engage in these sex sessions when she was sick, exhausted, that she was taking drugs, that these were prolonged for hours on end. But as we've been talking about all week since she's been facing cross-examination from the defense, there have been openings for Sean Combs' defense team to exploit. And it seems that is certainly what they have been doing. About whether or not she was a willing participant. Did she set up these events? Did she encourage them? Did she arrange the travel and pay for these male performers? Was she fueled by jealousy in her relationship with Sean Combs as opposed to being a victim of sex trafficking? These are the important questions that the jury's going to have to wrestle with. So let's talk about what happened today. Let's talk about the culmination of her cross-examination, what the prosecution did when they got a chance to question her as well. And also there was something going on about this mysterious unnamed rapper. Let's talk about it. Let me bring in Law and Crime's in-court reporter, Elizabeth Milner, who's been inside that courtroom for every day of the testimony. Elizabeth, it's good to see you. Before we even talk about Jane, though, and, well, before we even get into the cross-examination, my understanding is there was a bit of a back and forth about whether or not the judge was going to let in some pieces of evidence. I think one was an audio recording from Sean Combs, and one was some sort of personal note or maybe even a diary entry or journal entry from Jane. What's going on there?
Yeah, so these were conversations that took place outside of the jury. So before Jane got back on the witness stand today, as well as the jury even coming in for the start of the day, because we did have a pretty delayed start this morning. But as far as just some of the evidentiary issues that both parties were discussing this morning, the defense wanted to introduce a particular audio message that Diddy had recorded around December 20th of 2023. And so the defense was arguing in Jane's direct testimony that she said she told Diddy she didn't want to be doing these hotel nights going back all the way to 2021. And so they were saying that this particular audio message would go to Diddy's state of mind. And so again, this audio message from December 20th of 2023, where Diddy was saying something along the lines to Jane that he was unaware and never understood how she really felt about doing these hotel nights. And again, just putting this into context, the two started dating in 2021, and Diddy is saying in 2023 that he had no idea that she didn't want to be doing these hotel nights. And they were saying that they being the defense, that the government opened the door to let this piece of audio message in, but the government was kind of like, well, this time period elicited under direct was about 2024, and that was the end of their relationship. And they were saying that it's a 403 issue and that Diddy was possibly trying to feed a false narrative around this time frame, because again, context is a little bit of everything in this case, because December 20th of 2023 was a month after Cassie had filed her federal lawsuit and also settled within that next day. And so the government was kind of like, we don't know if this statement is actually truthful, and we don't know if, again, that Sean Combs was trying to feed this particular narrative to Jane, because again, Jane was expressing that she kind of felt the same way as Cassie did in certain pages of her lawsuit, and Diddy's now saying, okay, I didn't know that you felt this way. And so the government was saying that this is an attempt to get in his own statement as hearsay. Now, they said if the defendant wants to go up there himself and talk about this as a witness, as he would testify when the defense takes over and starts to do their case, the government said, hey, that's fine, you can totally do that. But as far as this particular audio message, the judge ruled in favor of the government, so the objection was sustained. Now, as far as the other exhibit and the other evidentiary issue, it had to do a lot with Jane and her kind of notes that she was making to herself within her notes app on her phone, kind of similar to diary entries. And so the government wanted to use this particular diary entry from around the time after Cassie had filed her lawsuit, and this was a diary/note entry from Jane herself. And so they wanted to use this particular note under redirect, so they didn't use it under direct. So they were trying to get it in under redirect because, again, around this time frame, the defense was still doing the cross-examination. And so the government was saying kind of the opposite what the defense was saying in the last argument, that the government said the defense opened the door. And the note itself, now we didn't see it because obviously the exhibits are still, they were kept closed from us in the public, us in the press, because Jane was still testifying. But what we did learn is that this note was also around that same time frame, December of 2023, where Jane was saying something along the lines of she felt manipulated, she felt obligated to be doing these hotel nights about 98% of the time. And the government said that this particular note that she had wrote to herself and might have also sent to Diddy, that it rebuts her cross-examination. But the defense was like, well, there's no probative value and it's unnecessary. And the government says they just really wanted to get in that one particular statement. They said it's under Rule 803. And Jesse, you can talk more about that. I obviously don't know what Rule 803 is, but that the government was saying that she didn't do this because she was scared of criminal prosecution, that she was doing this because this really kind of went to her state of mind of around that time. Now, initially, the judge did reserve his ruling on that particular sentence, but they picked that up. I think it was post the lunch break, and the defense was saying that Jane kind of did have a financial motive, and again, context is everything, where they were saying this note was coming in after December of 2023, so a month after Cassie had filed her lawsuit. So they were saying, okay, well, maybe it's possible that Jane had a financial motive because she had asked for $100,000 from Diddy for everything that she had endured throughout their 3-year relationship, and she didn't ask for it in a civil suit. She didn't ask it through a lawyer. She sent this through a particular text message. message. And so what ended up happening is the judge denied the government's application to admit this particular statement. So unfortunately, the jury was not able to see this statement whenever Jane got back on the stand and whenever the government did redirect her testimony towards the end of the day today.
Yeah. Rule 803 is an exception to hearsay, and there's a number of different exceptions. Hearsay, out of court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. Here's the thing. When I hear the idea of him having a recording that allegedly would be used to feed a narrative, I go back to what Mia testified to, that after Cassie's lawsuit, she gets contacted allegedly by D-Rock, Sean Combs' former bodyguard, basically trying to say, hey, yeah, everything between Cassie and Sean, that was normal. That was normal. Like trying to make sure she gets on the same page, and that he was trying to make sure Sean Combs could reach out to her, that he wanted to give her a gift, bribery, obstruction, tampering with witnesses. That is all the narrative being put forward by the prosecution, and it also makes one of the elements or potential elements of racketeering, this criminal enterprise charge. Let me go now into the cross-examination of Jane. There has been a lot of talk today, particularly when I was covering the lunchtime show on Law and Crime's YouTube page, about this mysterious rapper. Something happened, this encounter happened in 2024, Las Vegas. There's an unnamed rapper, either the rapper's wife or girlfriend, and apparently one of the alleged sex workers that Jane and Sean Combs had used in their private sessions was brought up. What was this all about?
Here we go.
So if you've been following Jane's testimony, I know you have, Jesse, but to our viewers, if you've been following Jane's testimony, she had mentioned this particular trip to Vegas that happened in January of 2024. So again, context is everything. This was a time that Diddy and Jane were in an off period from their relationship. They had taken a break, but Jane had gone to Vegas with this unnamed rapper because they were pretty adamant today not to say this rapper's name in court. And there's kind of a reason why, and I'll get to it in just a second, but it's interesting because Jane around this time was telling Diddy that she loved and missed him, but the two weren't speaking during this particular month at the same time. But Jane ended up going to Vegas with this unnamed rapper, flew on his private jet, but also with his girlfriend/wife, unclear on who that is. But what we did learn today is that Diddy is particularly close in friendship with this particular rapper, and that the defense referred to this, again, unnamed rapper as an icon. And so reading in between the lines,
we don't know who this unnamed rapper is. Just in case y'all don't know, and I'm gonna give it to you like Gene gave it to us. There's a 50-50 chance that you can guess at who it is. I bet you any amount of money, half the people that understand hip hop and follow hip hop know that there's a 50-50 chance that you can guess who it is. I like that one. That was funny. Here we go, y'all.
You can kind of see possibly who it might be. But Jane said that she was surprised to see Anton, the entertainer/escort, there at this particular Vegas trip, because if you remember under her testimony, she had said that Anton was there and he was having sex with a woman on a bed, and a bunch of people were kind of watching all of this, and this again being in Vegas. And Anton also knew this unnamed rapper who had this connection or friendship with Diddy, and Anton also knew this unnamed rapper's girlfriend/wife, because the defense kind of said it's his girlfriend, it's his wife, so we don't know what their state of the relationship is. But Jane was explaining that 7 or 8 people were in this room kind of watching Anton have sex with this woman, and that Jane admitted that she flirted with this particular unnamed rapper, and that Jane had previously told the government in previous interviews that she flashed her breasts during this encounter, this flirtationness that was going on in this hotel room, and that she began dancing during this, and that the rapper told Jane that she was beautiful and that he wanted to F her. And so I think what the defense was trying to do when pointing out this particular January 2024 Vegas trip was kind of trying to say that Jane would also reach out to the entertainers or the escorts outside of her relationship with Diddy, because in this particular case, she was recommending an entertainer that she and Diddy used to this unnamed rapper and to his girlfriend/wife, because they were, the unnamed rapper and his girlfriend/wife were a part of the lifestyle. And so Jane was kind of recommending Cabral to them. And so the jury was able to see text exhibits, and initially Jane was saying things along the lines words of Merry Christmas. Hope you had a beautiful holiday. And then Cabral texted a few days later saying, good afternoon, beautiful. I'll be in your city on the 7th. And Jane was responding, hey, Cabral, good morning. What time is your flight today? Those types of things. And so at the end, what we did learn, because I know there's been a lot of talk about who this unnamed rapper is. They didn't say who this person was during testimony today, but it seemed like the defense's whole point of even bringing up this particular trip is one that Diddy was upset that other people knew that Jane and him were kind of engaged in this lifestyle based off the fact that Jane had recommended Cabral, an entertainer that the two have used in hotel nights, to this unnamed rapper.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I wonder the jury might take away. One, like you said, if she is having this communication, this relationship with one of the sex workers who's being used essentially, right, in this crime, if the jury's accepting this as sex trafficking and it's crime, kind of muddies the waters on that, makes it a little bit more gray. Is she really a victim of sex trafficking? I also think, her allegedly flashing her breasts, it kind of goes a little bit to her lifestyle and her character. But also, I think it seems to me, if the allegation is you have this unnamed rapper who's interested in bringing someone into their relationship, it's maybe normalizing this behavior, and maybe it's not necessarily, a sex trafficking criminal enterprise as the prosecution is trying to allege. Maybe that's where they're going. I do understand, though, whether it was because of this or something else. What was a big event that happened that was talked about in trial today was this blow up, this fight that happened between Sean Combs and Jane that was quite violent, right? And it wasn't just violence, at least the way that was described, from Combs directed to Jane. It was vice versa too, right? This was a fight. What happened here? Yeah,
so this was a fight that took place in June of 2024, so around this time frame just last year, where afterwards or before this incident had occurred, Diddy and his family went on a road trip, and then after coming back from this road trip, that Diddy went over to Jane's house on this specific date of June 18th. And if you've been following Jane's testimony very closely, she alleged under direct that she was beaten and then made to do a hotel night or give oral sex to an entertainer even after being beaten by Diddy. But under the cross-examination, they really kind of peeled back just a little bit more as far as just kind of how everything led up to what it ended up happening. And so the jury was able to see exhibits, and that was being the decorations laid out inside of Jane's home where Diddy pays the rent for, but that Jane had set up just kind of candles and champagne and tequila shots, and then Jonathan, Diddy's assistant, came over and set up kind of the red lights in the room. And so the red lights turned on once it got dark, so the jury was able to see these particular photos, because again, remember, we can't see the exhibits while Jane has been testifying, but we did hear about some of the exhibits that the jury did see. For example, photos of Jane and Diddy together, photos of them on the patio, photos of the red lights, and then even video from that night where Diddy is kind of talking about the Boston Celtics, and then it's over the song Lovely Day. And so the jury was able to see all of that. But Jane had testified under direct 30 minutes after taking that particular video where the Lovely Day song is playing, that this was 30 minutes after she took that video. That's when the physical assault occurred. And so Jane was saying, while she was still being cross-examined, that she and Diddy both had about 2 to 3 glasses of champagne. I think Diddy may have had one more glass more than her, and both took 2 shots of tequila. But Jane said that she had a feeling that another girl was on that family trip that Diddy had just returned from. And so the defense was kind of like, okay, well, you're saying that another girl was on this trip, but did you have any proof that another girl was on this trip? I think trying to insinuate that this reaction out of Jane came out of nowhere. She had no proof that Diddy was with anyone besides his family. And so what ended up happening is that Jane got pretty upset. She threw glasses at Diddy. She threw candles at him. The wax got on him. And the defense was kind of trying to point out that there wasn't, like initially when this fight first broke out, that Diddy wasn't necessarily hitting her at first. And so they kind of talked a little bit more about this other woman, and that this girl lived in Miami, that Diddy and Jane had fought previously about this particular woman. She was also someone who was unnamed. And then Jane was explaining that on that night, on June 18th, going into June 19th of 2024, that it was kind of a ball of emotions that night. She had said that this was the first time that she had ever slammed Diddy's head into a counter. She said that this was the first time that she and Diddy even got into a physical altercation. And so Jane was calling him names such as pedophile and disgusting and a monster. And Diddy was kind of Diddy had called her crazy, but this was, the defense was trying to point out that Diddy was calling her crazy after the candles and the glasses were thrown at him. And so then the defense is kind of like trying to piece by piece recount Jane's kind of events of the night, like how she ran into the bedroom and then the bathroom and then the closet, and how she changed into a large dress and why was she still wearing heels and those types of things. And the defense throughout this was kind of pointing out that Diddy didn't put his hands on her up until it became a certain point. And so initially the defense was kind of like, okay, well, Diddy was just kind of following you behind. He was just following you to the bedroom and the bathroom, but just saying things along the lines of, are you not going to talk to me? But from Jane's perspective, she was saying that even throughout all of this, he was still kicking down her doors, because remember, under her direct testimony, the jury saw photos of her broken down doors, or the doors that were just either kicked through or hit through by Diddy. And Jane was telling Diddy to leave and that she hated him. And then again, the defense was going into, okay, well, why were you still wearing like a baggy dress and heels and not wearing activewear? You're someone that works out, so why wouldn't she change into just, I guess, activewear clothes as opposed to what she ended up wearing? And so it felt like the defense at that point was kind of trying to imply that Jane was the agitator in this situation. She was the one who threw the candles first. She was the one who threw the glass first. And that Diddy, around this time frame, because this, if you think about it also in context, it's June of 2024. This was weeks after the CNN video came out that showed the brutal assault video of Cassie and Diddy at the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016. So it felt like at times, Jesse, that the defense was trying to imply that he was still feeling the stress from the CNN video being released, and maybe that is why he had that particular reaction. And so Jane was saying that Diddy end up kicking her and putting her in a chokehold, and then a little bit later in her testimony, she kind of she explained that the chokehold was through his arm, and because the defense was like, well, we're seeing this video of 5 days later after this particular incident, and you don't have any finger marks around your neck. It doesn't seem like he strangled you doing this. But instead, Jane was explaining that Diddy kind of grabbed her by the arm, put her up in a chokehold where she just was kind of just up in the air type of thing. And so the defense was pointing out that she had no discoloration on her neck, but then the defense was saying hours after, or after she was hiding for hours, I should say, that she kept on calling Diddy names, and that Diddy, when she came back from hiding for a few hours, because remember, she said that she hid behind a wall for like 2 hours, that after she came back that she was still calling him names. But even after Diddy was calling her names, that he didn't kick her during that time. And it was only while they were on the patio where Jane had punched Diddy in the back of the head. So then Diddy had punched her back and punched her in the eye and punched her in the forehead. And Diddy told her something along the lines of, you're trying to take my kids away from me, you're trying to take me away from my kids. And so it seemed like, again, from the defense's perspective, I think they were trying to frame this as, okay, well, maybe you're trying to look for something out of this because you just saw this hotel video that came out just weeks ago, and now you're instigating a fight that seemingly kind of came out of nowhere, and you're trying to possibly get something out of it. And so then they kind of got into a little bit more about it after the lunch break, and just that during this time frame, Jane had gotten a hold of the other woman that was allegedly on this family trip, and that this other woman was telling her mean things, Jane was telling her mean things, and then how Jane had to take a shower afterwards, but then Diddy kept slapping her and those types of things. And then Diddy had told her, okay, we have never fought like this. Now that this lawsuit comes out, now you want to attack me. And so I feel like that's where the defense kind of really just was like, okay, it seems like you did have kind of a reason for doing this. And then they got into a fight just about how Jane was over in Vegas for that trip in January of 2024, and that even after the fight, Jane had to put on a hotel night outfit, and then Diddy took Jane's phone to text Anton. Then Diddy saw a message between Jane and Anton about that mutual friend, that being the unnamed rapper that she went on the Vegas trip with. Anton came over about 45 minutes later, according to Jane. At first, Jane and Anton were just kind of making small talk, but then the defense is kind of like, okay, well, when did you have time to put on makeup? You say that you put on makeup to cover up your bruises. And then it was like, okay, well, at any point you could have possibly just drove away and left. You could have left with your car and when you were trying to grab Anton. And so I feel like the defense was like, okay, there were just so many points that had happened during this night. But I think one thing that also stands out is that when Anton had arrived, Diddy and Jane went into a separate room in her home, and Diddy was still upset about this mutual friend that Jane had saw in Vegas, and Diddy told her, how could you go to another man's freakoff? Go out there and F him, that being the entertainer that was still inside Jane's home. And then Jane told Diddy no, and then Diddy said, okay, well, is this coercion? And so what ended up happening, Jane took an ecstasy pill. She ended up giving this particular entertainer oral sex. Diddy had no interaction with Anton. During this, they ended up cleaning up the glass before Anton even came over, and that was just kind of the gist. And I know that was kind of a lot, but I feel like the defense's entire point of just this particular piece of what had happened that night was just the reaction from the CNN video.
Well, the prosecution's banking it on being one of the more clear-cut cases of force being used to pressure her into a commercial sex act. And there seems to be the defense saying there's a lot more context, and maybe, and I think it was really interesting when you said, did she have a motivation to instigate this for personal benefit after the tape came out of him appearing to beat up Cassie Ventura? I think that's a really interesting point. But look, the defense was very keen on trying to say today, and during the course of their cross-examination for the last day or so, 2 days or so, that she consented to this. She consented to the hotel nights, that she had all this love for Sean Combs. What came out today? I mean, I know there was a text to the effect of, I feel as your lover, I wanted to please you and I pushed through, and she wanted to cuddle with him. And then there was this whole back and forth about, did she buy him a TV to watch certain movies together?
So Jane said, according to her, that she bought this portable TV so that way that, yes, she and Diddy could watch their movie nights. But she also explained that she and Diddy, or this was a way for her not to have sex with other men for these hotel nights. So instead of having to complete these hotel nights or do these hotel nights, instead she was like, okay, well, I bought him a portable TV screen that was, I guess, the size of just like kind of a computer monitor, so that way the two could watch their videos together instead of her having to actually do the sexual acts with other men. But even as far as just the text messages go too, the defense was showing the jury, I should say, just different text exhibits. For example, on December 20th of 2023, and this is around the time frame that Diddy had made this note saying that he didn't know how she felt about her wanting to do these hotel nights, where Jane is saying, you only reached out to me because you're waiting for someone else to come over. Diddy said, well, can you please take quiet time to read everything that I said? Thank you, I love you. And Jane was saying that there were moments of intense back and forth during this time period. She said this was a really emotional time frame for us. I really hit my wall here. Come to find out, another woman had the same experience with him, and that being Cassie, when she had just initially reached she had initially filed her lawsuit, and then obviously it was settled the next day, but that there was still love and pain there. Because I think one question that might be on the juror's mind is that you're saying that Cassie's lawsuit affected you so much, you two were on an off period. Why didn't that off period just stay as is, and why did you continue to see him getting back together as just a couple months later on February of 2024? And then there were just other text messages where the jury heard an audio message from Diddy December of 2023, where Diddy is saying, okay, we should really focus on us at the end of the day. What can we do to make you feel better? Let's get to the solution, move on with your life, so that way you don't feel like I wasted your life. Because Jane around this time was just saying that she was kind of in her mid to late 30s-ish, and that she felt like she wasted like some of the best years of her life having to do these hotel nights, and that she could have been treated better by other people. And so then jury was shown text December 27th of 2023 where Diddy is again asking, so what's the solution? We're going into a new year. I don't want to fight. And Jane is saying, well, I tolerated and dimmed myself for you, Puff. Don't discredit me. Under direct, Jane had said that Diddy told her that Diddy had told her to charge her for her resentment, and that's where Jane was saying, okay, well, I wasted my time, and that wasted time equal to the amount of $100,000. And so Jane was explaining that she still wasn't planning on filing a lawsuit, and that she had actually told some of her unnamed friends just about Diddy, and that one friend told her to that Jane had set the tone for their relationship. The defense was also bringing messages and even some videos and showing them to the jury as far as just even post this June fight that had happened in 2024, where just a few days later it seemed like everything was kind of back to normal for Jane and Diddy, where she went over to Diddy's house. They were taking videos together. It seemed like the defense was trying to imply that Diddy was trying to break up with her, and that Jane at the end of the day was kind of like, I guess, not necessarily fine with it, but she and Diddy were still hanging out together because the jury saw this particular video. We were able to hear this video where Jane is calling Diddy her bestie, and that they're laughing together. And again, this was post this June altercation, but Diddy told her that they'll break up but still be best friends, and that even after the altercation had happened in June, that Diddy and Jane were together intimately post this incident that happened June 18th, June 19th. However, they were together intimately with no entertainer. And so there were just other points during her cross-examination where the defense was kind of pointing out that there were times that an entertainer wasn't involved. There were times that Diddy and Jane both respectively were just saying how much they loved and missed one another and those types of things. There were points where the defense gave all the jurors headphones so that way they could hear particular voice notes that were sent to Jane and sent from Diddy too. And I was kind of at first unsure why these particular voice notes weren't just being played aloud for all of us to hear, but I think because of the redactions that needed to be had in terms of just personal matters relating to Jane specifically, as involving her child and even her child's father, as well as possibly this unnamed rapper that went to the 2024 Vegas trip in January. I think that's kind of what had made up for why the headphones were given to the jurors and to the witness and to both parties, as opposed to us listening to all of it.
Oh, that's the name of that tune, y'all. Perfect timing, because I am ready to go get me something to eat, man. Diddy, come on, Diddy. I don't know the other guy. It's another guy that got free Diddy shirt on. You got Diddy's son, of course, need to be on his side. Got the shirt on, and he got kicked out the courtroom. That judge is trying to sugarcoat all this stuff to make it seem like he got a chance or something. Perfect example. The last time he was denied bail, the judge made him think that he had hope. Just, y'all seen Shawshank Redemption? Hope. Over the weekend. You'll get my, let me think about this, and you'll get my answer over the weekend. So Diddy and his whole team had to wait the whole weekend plus a Monday to get a verdict of no. He knew he was gonna say no. They sticking it to Diddy. I'm trying to tell y'all, I'm holding fast on this one thing. Diddy done pissed the wrong person on that run the daggone world. It's a group of people, I think. Alcohol, the liquor, the moonshine and everything. They got billions or trillions and zillions of dollars that run everything. And there's crooked lawyers, police officers, higher ups, politicians, and everything that's getting their pockets greased. If you do the right thing, do something that nobody would like stealing babies, I hate to say that, I give you all this money. That's what I'm figuring out, y'all. That's how the whole thing works. All you gotta do is keep your mouth shut, and man, I'm trying to tell you, my whole life changed when I can't believe all this stuff is happening like this. You only live once, man. You only live once. Look here, I'm gonna get on up out of here, man. Hey, y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell them Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.